welcome to the Earth Feels podcast.
I'm Rose.
And I'm Christine.
Welcome to Earth Feels, the podcast for people feeling overwhelmed by the endlessly gloomy climate news.
Where every week we have soul-based conversations about climate change and explore the idea that climate change may be happening for us as much as it is happening to us.
If you are ready to shift your focus and secure the future for our kids and our grandkids, then this is the podcast for you.
And yes, we do know how to spell. Hi, Rose.
Hi, Christine.
Here we are in December.
Yep. Coming round the bend.
At this time of year, some people decide it's time to donate to organizations they want to support. And I recently got asked a question. Somebody messaged me saying if she was going to donate, what were the best climate organizations to donate to? So what is our question today?
So then our question becomes, what is the best way to donate to fight climate change?
With a little asterisk, probably.
Probably. Yeah.
I guess that's the good and the bad news. There's so many aspects of this issue that if you choose to tackle one, it will have a positive ripple effect on the whole.
Good point.
Yes. So what are your top climate organizations to donate to, Rose?
Well, I have a couple that I donate to monthly, and I think we're in sync with 350.org.
Yeah.
They do great work in, I think, educating, but really being on the forefront of putting out information so that people know what's going on out there, working with other organizations. I see them more as like a liaison between all different kinds of climate organizations. Would you agree with that or not?
I think that's one of their mandates. Certainly, I'm going to support them until we have this climate problem solved, just because they really were the ones that gave me my climate epiphany back in 2009, which, a lot of people feel like this is such a huge elephant. How do you start to address it? 350.org's message in 2009. If we can find that video, I'll find it and let's post it on this episode website, which is just like scientists say it should be 350 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Right now, at that point, I think we're at 385. Now we're well into the 400s. Anyways, it was clear we need to get it down to 350. Yes, I support them all, though we have recently redistributed our charitable donations, the ones we give monthly, and we've decreased the amount we give to 350.org, although it's still monthly. Mark, my husband, is very interested in clean technology and clean energy, and the Rocky Mountain Institute has been around for decades. They were Amory Lovins and his now ex-partner, Huntrey Lovins, started it back in the 70s or the 80s in Colorado. Even then was about alternative energy and making it viable. Rocky Mountain Institute's mission is to transform global energy use to create a clean, prosperous, and secure low-carbon future. Unlike 350.org, which is really a lot about lobbying and strategic activism, RMI is not even waiting for the politicians, although they do meet with them. I know they met with the Obama administration. I would say they're about strategic partnerships. On their website, they say they help cities, communities, states, and regions meet their energy and climate goals, boost economic growth, and achieve the goals set out in the Paris Accord. And I know specifically, Mark was interested that right now they have something called the Global Cooling Prize. It's competition to develop a climate-friendly residential cooling solution. So in other words, air conditioning that can provide access to cooling to people around the world without warming the planet.
And isn't cooling the number one issue in drawdown?
Yes.
One of the things that I was going to say about 350.org is that it holds a special place in our hearts because of Bill McKibben. Bill McKibben, who's the founder of 350.org, way back in the day as kind of a visionary. He wrote a book called Earth, EAARTH, and you'll recognize that from our podcast name. He talked about Earth on a tough new planet, and that's where Christine and I got the name for Earth Feels.
And Rose gets the prize for being on top of her drawdown solutions. Ding, 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 ding. Refrigeration is number one. So it just goes to show how interconnected everything is, right? So here's Drawdown doing that work, coming up with the solutions, and it's a completely different organization than Rocky Mountain Institute. But here's Rocky Mountain Institute. It's been working on it for 4 or 5 decades, the same kind of things. Are there other organizations? So 350.org, we've got RMI.
A big one for me is tree planting. So I give monthly as well to treesisters.org, Claire Dubois. And she's done, I think they're closing in on 10 million trees. What they do with your monthly stipend is she hires women in different areas of the world to plant trees. So it's helping women's organizations, giving women money. And we know that when you give women money, it goes back to the village, it goes back to families, gives them purpose, and helps them plant trees, which create carbon sinks.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So that's really win, win, win.
Yes. Yeah. It's an amazing organization. Those are my top 2. And then my other one that I'm really on board with is more, I see climate and economic inequality as being very closely linked. And right now here in the States, we're really seeing how the pandemic is kind of foreshadowing climate, in my humble opinion. We're seeing how many people are food insecure. And so there's a great organization that actually I donate quite a bit to. It's called Feeding America, and they work with all the food pantries throughout America. Those are my top 3, but I know there are so many more.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that's why we put that little asterisk. Probably. We're just talking about the ones that on our radar doing really good work, but there's lots of other organizations out there. We actually support World Vision, which is a Christian organization. So some listeners might not be interested in that. So you sponsor a child.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have at least 5 sponsored children that we support every month. I always choose a girl to support, although as my husband pointed out, it's actually you're supporting the whole village. So their family, the school, the whole community benefit. I think it's about educating girls and women. That piece of the climate puzzle.
Which also in Drawdown is one of the top 10.
Exactly. Number 6. Although interestingly, when I got this question recently, I told my friend about Drawdown. And I went on there to see where their list of solution was. It looks quite different than in the book. It's harder to find the list. And I searched women and girls because I knew my friend would be interested in the piece that of the climate puzzle, that educating women and girls and giving better access to healthcare to women and girls. You know, that the piece that is, you search women and girls and it doesn't come up on the website. In fact, I messaged them to say, what?
And keeping them honest.
Well, and they got back to me recently and they said, oh, it's under health and education now to reflect the priorities. But I'm actually going to get back to them and say it should be searchable as women and girls because that's what it is in the book. That's how it's listed in the book. And it's almost like they've erased that. I don't know if they got pushback or if it's just incidental, if I'm being paranoid. But yeah, you search women and girls on drawdown.org and it doesn't come up with anything.
Uh-oh. So what other organizations? Certainly Greenpeace, which are more activist oriented.
Mm-hmm.
I see hesitation there.
Well, you know what? It's not an organization that we give money to, but some people might like that more activist stance. We've given money to Al Gore's Climate Reality organization. We also regularly give money, and again, this is a faith-based organization, so some people wouldn't feel comfortable supporting it. But here in Canada, Mennonite Central Committee, our MCC, has been active since the Second World War in basically doing development work, supporting the poorest of the poor. And it's a faith-based organization, but they are very careful that it's not about proselytizing. It really is about the mandate of Christ to support the poorest among us. At Christmas time, in my husband's family, we draw names. And then on Christmas Eve, usually, because that's when traditionally they celebrate, we get together virtually, obviously this year, and we exchange gifts, in quotation marks, that are donations to an organization in the name of the person whose name you got. So you try and kind of tailor it to the person's interest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Okay, I'm pretty sure my mother-in-law doesn't listen to this podcast, but for example, I might have gotten my mother-in-law's name this year. And MCC has an initiative where you can purchase like a chicken or a goat for a family.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then,
Yeah.
so that's what I did. You can also put money toward education for children and meals. And I don't know, there's so many good places. And they all are, because of the fact, as Project Drawdown has pointed out, there's so much that's interconnected in the climate puzzle, that actually educating girls and women, providing health care for the poorest of the poor, those are all part of the puzzle. And I think there's some good initiatives out there for bringing clean cook stoves.
Which is in the top 10 as well, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So maybe we can find an organization that does that. And do you ever give money through Kiva?
I have. So microloans. Yeah.
Kiva kind of coordinates loans to people all over the world who are in need of some kind of funding. Usually it's businesses, right? That they're
starting small business. Yeah, starting small businesses, a lot of agricultural businesses, a lot of farming and stuff. But again, it's the poorest of the poor who might not have access to a microloan, which might be $100 that they need to buy some
Sometimes it's like
seed or chickens or whatever.
And so Kiva.org and other microloan organizations, which allow you to give your money, but then it gets paid back to you and you can reinvest it in different organizations. That's very satisfying as well.
Now, what about the clearinghouse that we talked about before, Giving Green?
That's right. There is an organization started by an economist who trained at the London School of Economics. He founded Giving Green just in the last couple of years to help people do exactly what we're talking about here today, find the best ways to maximize your climate giving, instead of putting hours and hours in, or even listening to this podcast.
Well, we want you to listen to this podcast.
So basically, Giving Green advises people on how to fight climate change with their donations in the most evidence-based way possible. There's also Give Well, which tries to find charities that save the most lives on a dollar per dollar basis, which is slightly different than our focus today, but it's also good. We'll put a link to both of those on this episode webpage, and also to this article in the Atlantic on the best way to donate to fight climate change.
And I just want to include that whatever organizations that you kind of zero in, there's a great website called Charity Navigator. And that will actually tell you, you can go in and see how much of your dollar is actually going to fund the actual work, how much of it is going to administration, how much of it is going to fundraising solicitation. So you can actually see out of every dollar, how much is getting spent. They rank every organization by percentages.
Now, is that US based or is it global?
That I don't know. It's charitynavigator.org. I think it's global because there's literally hundreds, probably thousands of charities.
I usually Google that. I can't remember the website, but if we're giving to a new organization. And you know what, before we move on, because we do have some good news today, this is not directly educating girls and women, but this is a charity that I support through my business because I think it's important to give back. And because most of my clients, the majority of my clients are women, I give to Days for Girls International.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, I hadn't either until a couple of years ago. And a friend of mine, shout out to Suzanne, who does listen to our podcast, told me about the fact that there are girls and women all over the world who have absolutely no access to sanitary products when they get their period. And so the reason that this impacts on education is for 6 or 7 days out of the month, they might have to stay at home and sit on a piece of plywood or leaves or whatever, and they can't go out because of their period. So Days for Girls provides appropriate sort of locally sourced sanitary products for girls and women. I just think that's like, for us women in the first world, we have no idea what that would be like, and yet it has such a huge impact. I mean, we know it's kind of a nuisance, but it's not more than that for women in the first world. So I lump it in there with supporting girls and women's education.
Great. So good news. You're talking about good news?
Yeah. Speaking of money and Bill McKibben, it came to my attention through a tweet that Bill McKibben sent out a couple of days ago. New York State just set a new standard for fossil fuel divestment.
I did see that. And the skeptic in me was, why isn't it quicker? Because it's
Well-
like 2025 before
Well,
they
but
divest.
that's in 4 years.
TikTok.
Well, you know, but the fact that they've announced it,
Mm.
that they're going to take a systematic approach to ensuring that their fund divests from fossil fuels. It's the third largest pension fund in the US, and it divests from fossil fuels by 2025. But they're not stopping there. Actually, they have a promise to completely decarbonize the fund by 2040, which would put it 10 years ahead of the Paris Agreement timeframe of global decarbonization. It also turns up the pressure on other institutions. This article that I'm reading, which we can link to, talks about the fact that California's pension fund hasn't done this. So now it's a little bit of an East Coast, West Coast kind of competition. There's very little bad news about it. It currently owns $300 million in Exxon stock.
Yeah.
And we should give a shout out to Divest New York, which rose up in the wake of Hurricane Sandy and had a lot to do with this announcement. They've been putting pressure on. That's where the activism part comes in. It's important. So that's good news.
I saw some good news that in India has made the decree that they will no longer be using disposable cups at their 7,000 railway stations. So no more plastic at their railway stations, and they will be using biodegradable clay cups that are not painted, so that artists will have jobs, or potters will have jobs as well. Much less plastic. Thank you, India.
Nice. And supporting a homegrown industry by doing it. Nice. And I would suggest that our action tip for today is to review your donation list if you have one. And if you don't have one, maybe it's time to create one or two, or put one or two organizations on a donation list and just see if you can get more green bang for your buck.
Perfect.
And sanity tip as we head into the holiday season.
I would say, and this is something that someone asked me the other day, what we focus on expands. What good things happened this year environmentally? What good things happened to you environmentally? What good things happened to you this year? I know it's been a really tough year with the pandemic, and people are pretty stressed out right now. A lot of people that are isolated. We should all be isolated. A lot of people are struggling. But if we can look at the good things that came out of this year and hold them in our minds and in our hearts, that helps. It helps lift your spirits.
Lovely. Thanks for listening, everyone. Hope you are enjoying the season despite 2020 being difficult for a lot of us.
Christine and I will be taking the next couple of weeks off for the holidays, but we'll be back with a new Best in Climate episode on Monday, January 4th. If in the interim you happen to miss our voices, our laughter, and the wisdom that we impart, well, we invite you to catch up with any of the 115 episodes that you may have missed. Until then, stay safe, take care of you, and take care of our beautiful Mother, Earth. Happy holidays to you and yours. That's this week's Friday episode of Earth Feels. Special thanks to singer-songwriter Kristen Hoffman for generously allowing us to use Song for the Ocean. Thanks for listening.
Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss an episode. Catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Children of the earth, I'm calling out. There's a mission for you